When you go silent after he rejects you, it sends a message louder than anything you could ever say. It's not angry, it's not emotional, it's not dramatic, it's just absent. And that absence speaks volumes. You might not realize it, but that silence, that complete withdrawal of your energy, your words, your effort, is starting to weigh on him in ways he didn't expect. See, he thought he had the upper hand, maybe not maliciously, but in his mind, he assumed he was in control of the narrative. He was the one making the decision. He said he wasn't ready. He said he needed space. Or maybe he just wasn't feeling it in the same way. And you, being the amazing, open-hearted person you are, respected that. You didn't beg. You didn't push. You didn't throw a fit. You just stopped. You stepped back. You went quiet. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because what he didn't expect, what very few people expect, is for someone to walk away with dignity, to disappear without drama. He thought you'd still be there, subtly orbiting, checking in, liking his stories, replying to his posts, staying in the wings, just in case he ever changed his mind. That's what he thought he'd get. And when he didn't, it confused him. He might not show it, you might not see it on the surface, but underneath, something is gnawing at him. Your silence is unsettling, not because you're trying to hurt him, but because it holds up a mirror. It forces him to confront the reality that you're not waiting around, that you're not holding your breath for him to reconsider, and that maybe, just maybe, he underestimated you. What you've done without realizing it is reclaimed your power. You see, silence after rejection isn't weakness, it's control, it's emotional discipline. It's saying, I know my value, and I don't have time to explain it to someone who couldn't see it when it was right in front of them. That is incredibly powerful. When someone rejects you, they often expect to feel relief. They think they've made a clean break. But what happens when they don't get the closure they thought they would? What happens when, instead of sadness or anger or pleas for understanding, all they get is nothing? They start to wonder. They start to feel the weight of their decision. That clean break they imagined, it becomes a void. And the thing about voids is, they're uncomfortable. They echo. And in that echo, all he can hear is the absence of you. He may start rationalizing it. Maybe she's just playing games. Maybe she's trying to manipulate me. But deep down, he knows. This isn't a game. This is someone who removed herself with grace. This is someone who didn't need to make a scene to be unforgettable. And what's ironic is, in trying to protect himself, in trying to stay in control by ending things or keeping at arm's length, he's now lost the very thing that made him feel safe. Your presence, your care, your interest, it's gone. And now the silence he thought he wanted feels like punishment, even though you're not doing anything to him. You're just not doing anything. This isn't about trying to make him regret it. This isn't about trying to hurt him or win some emotional chess match. It's about respect for yourself. It's about stepping out of a situation where you weren't fully chosen and choosing yourself instead. And that, more than anything, is what starts to kill him inside. Not because you've hurt him, but because you've shown him something he didn't expect. That you're perfectly capable of walking away from someone who doesn't see your worth. And here's the thing, silence doesn't just leave him wondering about you. It forces him to reflect on himself, on what he missed, on why he didn't fight harder, on whether he was too quick to give up. Your absence becomes the space in which he confronts his own limitations, his own fears, his own emotional immaturity. And that's uncomfortable because it's easier to believe that you're the one who's still hung up. It's easier to assume you're checking his page waiting for a sign. But when there's no sign, when there's just silence, that's when the doubt creeps in. He starts wondering if maybe you were never as attached as he thought. If maybe, instead of him rejecting you, you were just giving him the opportunity to reveal who he really is. Maybe this wasn't a rejection at all. Maybe it was a test, not of whether he wanted you, but of whether he was capable of recognizing something real. That realization stings. And now, the person who walked away quietly becomes the one who's remembered the most. Not because you made a scene, not because you flooded his inbox with messages, but because you let go. And in letting go, you became unforgettable. So if you're wondering whether your silence means anything, it does. It means everything. It's not passive, it's not weak, it's the clearest boundary you can set. It says, I gave you a chance, you passed, and I'm not here to convince you to try again. And while he's sitting in that silence, trying to fill it with distractions, you're already moving forward. You're already healing, evolving, and aligning with someone who won't need silence to realize your worth. Sometimes the loudest thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. You know what's interesting? Most people think rejection is the end of the story. That once someone says, I don't want this, the chapter is closed, the book is shut, and you're supposed to move on with some kind of silent dignity. But here's the twist. The story isn't over when he rejects you. In fact, for him, that's often when it starts to get real. He expected you to chase, let's be honest. That's what many people are conditioned to expect. They assume that the moment they say, this isn't working, the other person will scramble to prove their worth. That they'll reach out, text, call, ask what went wrong, maybe even beg for another chance, or try to subtly stay in the orbit, hoping proximity will reopen the door. That's what he thought would happen, because that's what usually does happen. That's the pattern. But you didn't do that. You didn't text. You didn't call. You didn't send one last long message trying to make sense of it all. You didn't look for loopholes in his decision or stay in touch under the pretense of staying friends. You just stepped back, quietly, completely, without noise, without drama, without a final scene. And that silence, that absence, that unexpected detachment, it didn't just surprise him, it shook him. Because rejection, for him, wasn't meant to be a clean break. It was meant to be a power play. Consciously or not, he thought he'd have the upper hand, that he could reject you but still enjoy knowing you'd be there. Maybe not right away, but eventually, that even if he walked away, your heart would still sit there, waiting, open, available. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just ego. It's the human desire to feel wanted even when we're not choosing someone. It's the comfort of knowing you have someone in your corner, still rooting for you, even after you've walked off the field. But when you didn't chase, when you didn't even blink, that comfort was gone. Suddenly, the safety net vanished. And that moment, right there, is when it starts to haunt him. He begins to question everything. Was she ever that into me? Did I misread how much she cared? Is she already over it? Did she have someone else? Or worse, was I not as special as I thought? See, we all crave certainty. And when you reject someone and they walk away silently, you lose the narrative. You lose the sense of control. Now he's the one left with questions. Now he's the one scrolling back through old messages, trying to reread the tone in your texts, trying to figure out where your head's at. Not because he's still in love with you necessarily, but because the uncertainty drives him insane. He had a script in mind, and you didn't follow it. And let me tell you, there's something incredibly powerful about that, because the moment you deviate from the expected script, you reclaim control of the story. You're no longer the rejected one. You're the unreadable one, the mysterious one, the one who doesn't need to beg for validation or prove their value after someone walked away. You became the kind of person who communicates something far stronger than any text message or emotional outburst ever could. You communicated with your silence that you know your worth, that if someone can't see what you bring to the table, you'll simply go, without debate, without delay. And that energy, that's rare, that's unforgettable. And don't think for a second, he doesn't feel it, even if he doesn't say anything, even if he doesn't reach out. Even if he pretends everything's fine, trust me, he notices the silence. He checks his phone, expecting to see your name pop up eventually. He waits for that familiar notification, the one that tells him you're still there, orbiting. When it doesn't come, it unsettles him. Not just because he misses you, but because he misses the security of being missed. It's in that quiet aftermath, when you've gone ghost, not to play games, but to truly move forward, that the weight of his decision starts to land. Not because you said something that made him regret it, but because you didn't. And sometimes that's so much more powerful than any words you could have spoken. He expected to be chased. He expected to feel needed, even in rejection. But instead, you gave him a lesson in self-respect. You showed him what it looks like when someone refuses to beg for the bare minimum, when someone knows that love isn't something you audition for, something you're chosen for. And if you're not being chosen, you're not waiting around, you're walking on. And that silence is louder than anything else. It echoes in his mind, in the spaces where your voice used to be, and it forces him to confront what he gave up without you having to remind him. Let him sit with that silence. Let him hear what it sounds like when you remove your energy, your warmth, your care, because that's the sound of you moving on. You know, one of the most powerful things that happens when you choose silence after rejection is that it creates something unexpected, mystery. And mystery, as strange as it sounds, is incredibly compelling. When you stop responding, when you stop chasing, you don't just withdraw yourself physically or emotionally, you actually start to trigger a whole new kind of response in him. Suddenly, he's left in this space of uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people reflect deeply. Think about it for a second. When someone rejects us, there's usually this immediate desire to explain, to clarify, to fix what feels broken. We want answers, closure, a reason why things didn't work out. And often, the person who rejected us is expecting some kind of emotional outburst, or at the very least, some continued attention. Maybe they think you'll be upset, or confused, or desperately trying to win them back. But when you choose silence, when you don't give them that script, you throw them completely off balance. He starts wondering, what is she thinking? Does she really not care? Has she moved on? Or is she hurt in silence? Suddenly, your absence of words becomes the loudest thing in the room. It pulls him into his own head because there's no longer a clear narrative, no explanation, no easy way to move on. He's forced to reflect on his own actions and decisions because you aren't giving him any answers. And that can be incredibly unsettling. Now, this reflection isn't just surface level. It digs deeper than that. When you stay silent, you don't just make him question what you think or feel, you make him question himself. He starts replaying the moments between you, the choices he made, the words he said or didn't say. Was he too harsh? Was he too quick to push away? Did he miss something important? The silence you hold acts like a mirror, reflecting his behavior back to him in a way that forces him to confront the consequences of rejecting you. And here's the key: mystery triggers curiosity. We're naturally wired to want to solve puzzles, to fill in blanks, especially when it comes to relationships and emotions. When he doesn't know how you feel or what you're thinking, he becomes obsessed with figuring it out. That's why silence is so magnetic. It's the opposite of the predictable script he expected. Instead of you chasing, explaining, or reacting, you're calmly absent. And that absence creates a gap in his mind that he can't ignore. The truth is, when you break that cycle of constant communication after rejection, you shift the entire dynamic. You move from being someone who's available, waiting, and reacting to someone who holds their own space with confidence and self-respect. And that shift makes him reconsider. It makes him wonder if he made a mistake, if he let something valuable go without fully appreciating it. It plants a seed of doubt that's hard to shake because it's not coming from your words, it's coming from the silence. And this isn't about playing games or manipulating feelings. It's about giving yourself permission to step away, to protect your energy, and to show that your worth isn't dependent on his approval. When you choose silence, you're saying, without saying, that you don't need to justify your value or convince anyone to recognize it. And that kind of confidence is magnetic. It also flips the script on what rejection means. Rejection isn't a final judgment on you as a person. It's simply a decision someone else made that doesn't have to define your worth or your future. By going silent, you reclaim your power. You're not allowing rejection to make you desperate or disheartened. Instead, you create a space where he's left to reckon with what he lost while you focus on your growth and healing. And here's something else. Silence gives you time. Time to reflect on what you want, who you are, and where you're going. Instead of getting caught up in a cycle of back and forth emotions, you get to pause, breathe, and build your confidence from within. This is the real transformation, because when he sees you calm and composed, even after rejection, he knows you're not someone who's easily shaken. You become more intriguing, more respected, and ultimately more desirable. So this silence isn't just about waiting for him to come back or regret his decision. It's about you creating a space where you honor yourself enough to let go of needing answers or closure from him. It's about trusting that your value is already set, no matter what he decides. And as strange as it might feel at first, that quiet strength is what disrupts his certainty, forces him to rethink, and may even open the door to something new between you, but on your terms. The bottom line is, silence after rejection doesn't mean you're ignoring your feelings or pretending it doesn't hurt. It means you're choosing to hold your power, protect your peace, and let him sit with the consequences of his choice. And in that quiet, something shifts for him, for you, and for what's possible next. Silence can be the loudest message you ever send. You know, one of the most powerful things you can do after someone rejects you, after he pulls away or shuts the door, is to say nothing at all. It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? Our instinct is to explain ourselves, to justify, to plead, or even to lash out in anger. But silence speaks louder than words ever could. And here's the thing. When you don't chase, when you don't beg or defend your worth, you are teaching him exactly how valuable you are, without having to utter a single word. Think about it like this. When someone rejects you, what are they really saying? Sometimes it's not about you at all. It might be about their own fears, their inability to commit, or their uncertainty about themselves. But what you do after that moment of rejection is crucial, because that's when you hold the power to shape the story he will tell himself about you, about him, and about what could have been. When you respond with silence, it creates a powerful shift in the dynamic. Instead of giving him the reaction he expects, the hurt, the pleading, or the drama, you become a mystery. You become someone who respects themselves enough not to beg for attention or approval. That silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. It's the sound of self-respect echoing in a room that's been filled with uncertainty. And here's why this is so magnetic. By not chasing him, by not trying to prove your worth, you're sending a message that is both clear and profound. It's saying, I don't need to fight for your love. I already know what I'm worth. And that message, it's impossible to ignore. It lingers in his mind long after the conversation has ended. Because when someone is rejected, they often expect to see that person chasing after them, asking for explanations, trying to get closure, or demanding to be understood. That reaction is what reassures them that they still have power, that they still matter. But when you choose silence, you refuse to give him that reassurance. You refuse to hand over the control of your emotions to someone who decided to walk away. What happens then is fascinating. Instead of feeling relief, instead of moving on easily, he's left with questions. Why isn't she upset? Why isn't she begging? Why isn't she chasing? Suddenly, he starts to wonder about his own choice. And that doubt, that's where your power lives. This silence isn't about punishing him or playing games. It's about honoring yourself. It's about recognizing that your time and energy are precious and not something to be wasted on someone who doesn't see your value. It's about showing him, and more importantly, showing yourself, that you have standards, you have boundaries, and you're not willing to compromise them just to be someone's second choice. The irony is, when you stop trying so hard, when you stop explaining yourself, people start to see you differently. They see you as someone who is whole, someone who is confident, someone who commands respect. And respect, that's the foundation of any healthy relationship. You don't need to say, look at me, I'm amazing, because your silence already says it. It says, I'm not desperate, I'm not needy, I'm someone who knows their worth and refuses to settle. And that kind of energy is magnetic. It draws people in because it's rare, it's refreshing, and it's powerful. But here's the crucial thing. This isn't about playing hard to get or being cold. It's about being authentic. It's about giving yourself the grace to heal without the pressure to explain your pain to someone who chose not to stay. It's about reclaiming your narrative and refusing to be defined by someone else's rejection. You might feel the urge to fill the silence with noise, to call, text, or post things online that hint at your pain or your confusion. But all that noise, it often drowns out your true value. It makes you appear reactive, needy, or unsure. And none of those things make you more desirable or respected. Silence, on the other hand, is calm. It's composed. It's an unspoken confidence that says, I'm okay without you. And when you are truly okay without someone, something remarkable happens. They start to realize that maybe they're the ones who are missing out. This silence also allows you to reflect. It gives you space to understand your emotions, to process what happened, and to grow from the experience. When you're not busy chasing or explaining, you can focus on what really matters, your own happiness, your own growth, and your own future. And here's another thing. When you don't chase after someone who rejected you, you're protecting yourself from the cycle of heartbreak. Because chasing usually leads to more rejection, more pain, and more confusion. But silence creates boundaries. It gives you dignity. It allows you to walk away with your head held high. So yes, your silence after his rejection isn't emptiness. It's an unspoken lesson. It's teaching him your value in a way that words never could. And it's teaching you too how to honor yourself in the face of disappointment. Because at the end of the day, the most attractive thing you can do after rejection is to show up for yourself, to be still, to be calm, to be silent. Because in that silence, you're not just healing, you're rising. And that silence, it's killing him. People often believe that rejection is this final absolute blow, like it defines their worth or it permanently dims their light. And it's understandable why. When someone turns you down, it can feel like the ground shifts beneath your feet. But here's the truth that most don't realize right away. Rejection itself doesn't make you less desirable. It doesn't change the essence of who you are. What really defines your value, your power, your desirability is how you respond to that rejection. That's the game changer. You see, so many people, when faced with rejection, do exactly what the other person expects. They get hurt, they chase, they explain themselves, they beg for a second chance, they pour out their emotions in the hope that if they just say the right thing or show enough vulnerability, the person who rejected them will suddenly see their value. But what ends up happening is the opposite. That chasing actually pushes people further away because it communicates insecurity. It says, I need you to validate me. And in relationships, nothing kills attraction faster than someone who believes in their own worth. When you respond to rejection with grace, with strength, and crucially with silence, that is what makes you stand out. That silence is a powerful message in itself. It says, I am whole, even without your approval. It says, my value is not dependent on your choice. And that kind of energy, it's magnetic. It pulls people in rather than pushing them away. It makes someone stop and think, wait, what did I just walk away from? Because here's the thing, when you chase, you give away your power. You give someone else control over your emotions and your sense of self. You put them in the driver's seat of your happiness. And what happens when someone else controls your happiness? You're constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, trying to meet their expectations, trying to fix what feels broken. But when you respond with calm, with dignity, and even with a bit of mystery, you take that power back. You become the one setting the pace and the tone. You're the one who decides what you deserve. That's why silence after rejection is so deadly to the one who turned you down. It unsettles them because it's unexpected. They anticipate a reaction, whether it's anger, tears, confusion, or pleading. Instead, they get nothing. And that nothing is a vacuum that starts to pull them in. It forces them to reflect on their decision, to consider what they might have lost. It makes them question whether they acted impulsively or whether they underestimated your worth. And here's a critical insight. Rejection is often less about who you are and more about where the other person is in their own life. Sometimes people reject because they aren't ready, because they're dealing with their own issues, or because they don't know how to handle something real and valuable. That's their limitation, not yours. So your reaction becomes a mirror. If you crumble, it confirms their doubts about you. But if you hold your head high, it challenges their assumptions and maybe even makes them regret what they walked away from. There's also a deeper psychological truth here about attraction. People are naturally drawn to confidence and self-respect. When you show that you respect yourself enough not to beg for approval, it triggers something primal. It signals that you have standards, that you know your worth, and that you're not afraid to walk away. And the irony is, when you respect yourself in that way, others start to respect you more too, sometimes more than they ever did before. It's why silence is often more effective than words after rejection. Words can come across as desperate or defensive. Silence is steady, it's calm, it's unshakable. It tells the other person that their decision, while it affects you, doesn't destroy you. And that resilience is a rare quality, one that people find incredibly attractive, even if they don't admit it right away. You might wonder, but what if he never comes back? What if I'm just left hanging? Here's the thing, your worth isn't tied to whether he returns or not. Your worth is inherent. When you respond to rejection with strength and silence, you're creating space for better things, for relationships where you're truly valued and desired. You're preparing yourself for someone who matches your energy, who respects your boundaries, and who sees your strength as something beautiful, not intimidating. And here's another layer. Silence after rejection is also about self-care. It's about protecting your emotional energy from being drained by someone who isn't ready or willing to give you what you deserve. It's about saying, I'm going to hold on to my peace, my dignity, and my happiness, because at the end of the day, the most attractive thing you can do is to be at peace with yourself. That peace radiates outward, and it draws people in effortlessly. So if you find yourself rejected, don't rush to fill the silence with explanations or apologies. Don't convince yourself that chasing will change someone's mind. Instead, embrace the power of silence. Let it be your quiet strength. Use it to reflect, to grow, and to reconnect with your own value. because rejection might feel like an ending, but how you respond is just the beginning of a new chapter. And that chapter, it's yours to write. You know, one of the most powerful things about going silent after rejection is what it does to you, not just to him, because there's this misconception that when someone rejects us, we immediately lose all power, that somehow we become less desirable, less worthy, or less significant. But here's the truth. Rejection doesn't make you less desirable. It doesn't diminish your value or your potential to attract what you want. What actually changes everything is how you respond after that rejection. And this is where your silence comes in as something incredible. When you don't beg, when you don't chase, when you don't flood him with texts, trying to explain yourself or get answers, you're actually doing something revolutionary. You're reclaiming your dignity. You're choosing yourself first. And that decision changes the entire dynamic, because while he's dealing with his own thoughts and doubts, you're growing, evolving, and becoming someone who is no longer waiting around for his approval. When he rejected you, he probably thought that was the end of the story, that by saying no, he'd push you away permanently, and that you'd be stuck in that moment of hurt or confusion. But silence gives you space, a precious kind of space, where you get to breathe, think, and reflect without external pressure. It's in this silence that transformation happens. You get to examine what you want, what you deserve, and what you're willing to accept in relationships moving forward. Let me be clear, that transformation isn't just about healing or feeling better. It's about leveling up. It's about becoming the version of yourself that's stronger, more self-assured, and far more magnetic. You stop being the person who needed him to say yes, and you become the person who no longer needs his validation to feel complete. Now, here's the twist that not many people see coming. Because you've gone silent, because you've stopped chasing, because you've started living your life with confidence and self-respect, there's a good chance he's going to come back. And when he does, he's not coming back to the same version of you. He's coming back to someone new, someone who's already outgrown the old pattern. That's where the real power lies. When someone rejected you, they were rejecting a certain version of you. The one who was available to be hurt, the one who was open to being pushed aside. But when you grow and evolve, you're sending a message that the old you is gone. The you who tolerated less, who needed constant reassurance, who compromised on what she deserved, she no longer exists. This is why silence after rejection isn't passive. It's active. It's a choice, and it's a way of saying, without saying a word, I'm done settling for less than I deserve. I'm done waiting for someone who can't see my worth. I'm moving forward on my own terms. And that shift, it shakes him to his core, because he starts to realize what he lost. He starts to feel the weight of his decision. The silence you gave him, it's not empty, it's full of potential that you're now claiming for yourself. He may come back, yes, but now you have a choice. And the beautiful thing is, this time, it's your choice entirely. You're no longer the person who needed him. You're the person who has options. You're the person who knows her worth. And that changes everything. You're not desperate. You're not begging. You're not scrambling for answers. And those qualities, they are magnetic. People don't want to chase what's desperate or needy. They want to be drawn to what's confident and self-assured. They want to feel like they're earning something precious, not just handed it. So when he sees that silence, when he feels that distance, what he's really sensing is your growth, your independence, your refusal to be anything less than what you know you deserve. That's incredibly powerful, and it's what keeps you in control of your story. What's even more important is that your silence gives you the time to figure out what you truly want going forward. Because when you're caught up in chasing someone who's rejected you, you lose sight of your own goals and values. You lose sight of who you are beyond that relationship. But silence creates a container for you to reconnect with yourself, to ask, what do I really want? What kind of relationship do I deserve? What kind of life am I building for myself? And when you come out of that silence, you're different. You're wiser, you're more selective, and you're more open to receiving the kind of love that matches your new level of self-respect. This isn't about revenge or punishment. It's about growth and alignment. It's about moving towards someone who truly values you, rather than someone who settled for less and then let you go. So remember this, your silence after rejection isn't a void. It's a powerful statement. It's a reset button. And it's a space where you rebuild your confidence, your identity, and your sense of worth. And if he comes back, it's a sign that your silence did exactly what it was supposed to do. It made him realize that you're not just someone he can discard and forget. You're someone who has standards, who commands respect, and who refuses to be treated as an option. But even if he doesn't come back, you've already leveled up. You've already transformed. You've already chosen yourself. And that's the most important victory of all.